Nobody really knows what the Bible is saying about relationship with God, about the transformation that comes in a person's life from relationship with God. And in that, what he has said a shepherd will look like, we have distorted that and made it something else. It's either fantastical or it's charismatic or it's, a wow show or something. But there's no value put on the true intention of what elder requirements are. But more than that, at the base level, we do not have an overwhelming presence of educated believers in the church.
I'm Todd, and I was naughty. I did everything wrong. I got kicked out of art school, I drank heavily, and I looked to other religions and versions of spirituality to get fulfilled. The problem was, I was in the occult and I didn't even know it. My life was a wreck, and I had to learn what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus.
And I'm Laura. I was super nice. I did everything right. I got saved young, went to Moody Bible Institute, got married, and followed the Christian rules to having a good life. Problem was, that formula didn't work. I had to change how I related with Jesus.
At the end of the day, what I learned is the very simple truth. Jesus is the answer, and the only one that will ever actually fulfill you.
Naughty versus nice.
Welcome back to Naughty versus Nice. Of course, I'm Todd.
And I'm Laura.
Of course, I'm Kelly.
We are doing question and answers again today, Laura.
Thank you for telling me what's going on.
I know, right? Not like you weren't in the room.
Did you know?
No.
You had no idea? So Kelly's got a bunch of questions. She's kind of pulled from Reddit family.
No.
Where are we getting them from?
These are, so when I sent out that last text a couple weeks ago, it was like, hey, anybody have any marriage questions? There were some that came through, and then the next 3 or 4 days, my phone was blowing up with people sending questions. It's like they started thinking on it, and they're like, yeah, I do have something.
Okay, so we have no idea what the questions are, and we'll just kind of go from there. And probably, 3 or 4, or what do we got?
We'll do as many as I decide on, as many as you'll allow me to do.
Oh, no. Yeah, see?
Please, Kelly. Mind your place.
Mind it. Speaking of marriage, that's where we're starting. What? Are you ready, dear?
Yes, let's do this.
Okay. What are some red flags in marriage? What if my husband believes in God, but he is not treating me right? It's a deep sigh from my significant other.
I'm just like, obviously, it's not like, I want to buy a pair of shoes and he won't let me. That's not treating you right. It's got to be.
Can I have a pair of shoes?
No, you've already got shoes. What do you need, more than 2 pairs?
All right, what were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, that's just, I was going to say that just probably doesn't sound right or read right very well at all. It's like the idea, what does it mean not to be treated right? I'm gonna go with the assumption that whatever preconceived idea you had regarding what that marriage was going to show up as and what it was going to look like, that's not coming to fruition. So your spouse is not fulfilling whatever roles or responsibilities you had envisioned that they would. So the first question that I would have would be something along the lines of, have you actually communicated what your goals or expectations? Have you sat down and had that conversation? If your husband isn't doing X, does he even know that that's something that you expected for him to do? Or your wife, if she's not doing Y, vice versa. So that would be the first thing. That's kind of where my head's going with that. So I would sit down, have a conversation, write it all out, make an agreement if you have to. Like Kelly and I had an agreement. There are 2 never-ending things, it just never ends, that happen in a household. One is dishes, the other is laundry.
I'd argue there's more. Okay, keep going.
Vacuuming.
I ruined plenty of clothes one time doing laundry, so it was clear that was not going to be one of my responsibilities. So I picked up doing the dishes. And so that's kind of, we kind of worked that out and kind of negotiated that one. So there are things to negotiate within marriage, and that sounds like this could be one of those things.
Well, I'm going to take it as it is an actually bad marriage, because I like to kind of see it from both sides, because there are a lot of marriages where someone might think they're not being treated fairly and it's very unclear. So if you are in a marriage and you're thinking this might be bad, there will be pornography. There's pornography is a red flag. Lying about pornography is a red flag. A man who suggests doing things in the bedroom that seem like they come from pornography is bad. A man comparing you to pornography is bad. A man who uses sex as mood control is bad. A man who views sex as something that you are obligated to give him no matter what, no matter how, no matter where. All of those things, I realize that's all bedroom stuff, but those are red flags. I would think relationally, I think that it does depend a little bit on, to say that a red flag is that you come home and you need to walk on eggshells. It can exist in the normal context as well. But I would say if you never feel you can express your own feelings, if you feel you can never be angry, if you get the silent treatment, he threatens to kick you out, he locks you in, all of those things, in any subtle form of those, I would consider a red flag. And maybe those are too extreme. I don't know.
Just thinking of some young women and some of the things that they've asked me about as being an old married woman.
We're not old.
An example, one young woman said that her fiance kept insisting that he was her spiritual leader. But yet when she was struggling, she would ask him to pray with her and he wouldn't pray with her. And so she's like, is that weird? And I was like,
yes.
Yeah, that's weird. Like, if you're supposed to be growing with somebody spiritually, you pray together. Todd and I pray together quite often. We have people call us and be like, hey, will you just pray with us over the phone? Like, it's something that's very common and normal that happens. The other thing is, Todd never actually has to say out loud that he's my spiritual leader. Like, we don't have to write that out. We don't have to say it. I feel like if you have to say it, then
that's a phrase in our house. If you have to tell me about it, you don't have it.
Yes.
Or some version of that.
When I was younger and single, that was how I knew that the guy was really bad at, talking to girls and stuff. He would always tell you how many girls are interested in him. That was how you knew no girls were interested in him. You're like, I'm not going and hanging out with that guy because I'm going to have 0 girls interested in me too. Sorry, dear, those are before we met.
I would say that that's a red flag, though. Are their behaviors and their words different? Do they not line up? And is he or she a different person at home than in public? I'd say those are 2 big things.
Yeah, what is their participation level? How do they participate? Do they only participate in certain activities like sex, for example, but they won't participate in any of the other difficult things that happen, especially if you have kids, like reprimanding the kids or helping them with their homework? They're enthusiastic about 2 or 3 areas only, and everything else is pretty much hands off.
And are they involved in church? I mean, I don't mean you have to be the superstar, but does your spouse have any other relationships in the body that influence them spiritually, and do they want them? I get it that guys have a harder time doing that, but I think that you can do it. It's not that hard. There's ways guys can do that with one another, and it doesn't have to be like girls going shopping or something, which I like doing.
No, they got axe throwing. That's like, go do that.
Try the shopping. It's actually fun.
I'm not shopping with anybody. I'm going to shop for axes to throw. That's what I'm going to do.
I had another example, and of course I forgot it because you said axe throwing. I was like, I would go axe throwing.
Ooh, axe
we don't
awesome.
want me to go axe throwing.
Do we answer?
Oh, yeah. Here's another red flag that this is just, once again, off the top of my head, stuff I've seen with young adults around us. Does the man listen to other women? So this is something I noticed. We were out to dinner with another couple who is 20 years younger than us. And I realized that the boyfriend never responded to me. I may comment in something in the discussion, but he would listen. He'd look at me and listen, and then he would instantly turn to Todd and respond to Todd and like cut me back out of the conversation. But of course, I don't really care about stuff like that. So like I just kept commenting if I had something to say. So it took me a while to realize that's what he was doing and stuff. But does he listen to women? Like, does he hear what other people have to say, or is he just poo-pooing it because it's from a woman?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm not even ready with the next question.
Hop to it.
What counts as sexual immorality? An emotional affair? Sleeping with someone else? Porn? Looking at another woman with lust? Or I'm just thinking, where is the line biblically?
All of those are.
Check.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear from
and a bunch
Matthew
of stuff
5.
you didn't mention either. Is on that list too. Like I said, for women it shows up differently. Sexual immorality for a woman can also be hiding the fact that they had lunch with somebody at the office from their husband. When a woman does something like that, I'm assuming he's healthy, and he's not like, "What? You went out with Bob?" Like that. If a woman feels the need to hide some sort of situation because of an emotional something, when women cheat, it's like they're reading novels. That's porn. Like the Harlequin, we call them nice things. We call them Harlequin romance novels. They're porn. That's what it is. So it's different for women. It shows up differently. And there's such a thing as like emotional cheating, that kind of thing. The idea of men looking at other women with lust is the equivalent. How it shows up for a woman is going out and having lunch with Bob from accounts receivable, and he's really nice and sweet. He has characteristics my husband doesn't have, but I wish my husband had. And it's more than just talking about spreadsheets,
That sounds like a weird meeting anyway.
I don't know.
I think when I hear this, I hear the question, and I think it's great to have these lines in the sand and understand what they mean. But I think people are like, okay, what is sexual immorality? Okay, check. But the essence of why it matters in a relationship is faithfulness in covenant. And so that is why a lot of times when things are spoken of about adultery, there's some kind of vague idea with it of just in general a disregard or a disloyalty. So I think it is just as dangerous. You don't necessarily slap the sexual immorality on it, but somebody who's not engaged, it doesn't mean they're engaged in something sexual. They're just checked out. And there's an unfaithfulness. A man who works because he finds more satisfaction in the reward of earning his money than in the companionship of his family. That's unfaithfulness. You can't, it's not going to be on that list, but it's still damaging.
I would say probably last and final thought, especially with the year being 2025. If you go up and ask your spouse to go look through their cell phone, or you don't know their security code for it, you can't pick up their phone and go through it at any time. That's a problem. If you're married, that's a problem. That is Kelly's phone. I have her code. I have complete access to it. She has complete access to mine. There's no. And that's one of the things. I need to have my private life. Not on your phone, you don't. Not if you're married. So
I'm just going to put a little caveat on that. We both have full access, to computers, phones, whatever. But it's not like we're both going through them every night.
No.
Because the need isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, if your phone's sitting there, I'm like, I need to text somebody real quick. I can grab it, and at no time will you be like, what are you doing? What's happening? Because there's nothing on the phone.
Yeah. I'm not like, whoa,
You're right. All right, so this is kind of a second parter to the last question. Can you divorce over an emotional affair even if there wasn't physical touch?
I say yes.
I'd say it goes back to the heart and the pattern of behavior.
It depends on the circumstance.
Yeah, and again, is it, in my opinion, is that an allowable offense? Yes. It is also my opinion that in each and every case you walk through it individually and you examine if it's for the better or the worse of both of the parties in light of what's happened, to move forward or to not move forward. So I think, but do I consider it serious? Absolutely.
Yeah, like I say, it's a circumstantial thing at a certain point. Is this the high school boyfriend, the one that got away? And you've been going out and having lunches or whatever with him, like the girl or the wife or whatever, for the last 2 years and not keeping it secret? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Not because it's secret, not because it depends on who, it depends on the situation, it depends on the circumstance. It absolutely does, all the way around. And in some cases, absolutely, it is the equivalent of infidelity because of how women are, because of how they're wired, and
both sides of that. Because I don't.
It is
how a woman will take and recover from a husband who has had an emotional affair is a part of that equation, just as much as women are more likely to have an emotional affair than a physical one. So, but it's both sides. I can see that being hard.
It is. And for a guy showing up like pornography, for example, is this something that is a hour to hour kind of situation, and it's been going on for years and years and years, and there's a whole thing going on there. You know what I'm saying? So,
all right, this one has a little backstory with it. All right, so my friend's parents got divorced when she was a toddler because he was addicted to drugs. He was stealing money to feed his addiction, and his family was going without. Her uncle told her mom that she wasn't allowed to get married again unless it was remarrying the husband, because she would be sinning since she quit her last marriage. Anyway, flash forward 10 years, and the dad claims he has gotten saved. Not even 6 months after, they are remarried, and he is now preaching. The marriage that time around lasted around 3 years when he got back into drugs, but also was caught looking at child pornography, but then blamed it on the daughter. He would say that he didn't want the mom to have to choose between the husband and the daughter, so he made the choice for her, and that's the only reason why he looked at porn.
Okay, that
what?
Yeah.
It went into like a really bizarre situation.
I know.
But,
Yeah,
well,
I was just like, it's drugs.
I know where they're pulling. It's from the 1 Corinthians 7, this idea that they've separated or divorced and she can now only remarry, because that's in that instruction when Paul is talking about a completely 100% different situation than what this is.
Well, so it goes on to say her uncle told the mom she wasn't allowed to get remarried unless it was to the dad for a third time. What was never mentioned or addressed was the father's drug use, pornography, theft, or that he married a different woman in between the marriages to her mother. Nobody confronted him or talked to him about any of this and just let him preach. So her question is, why are we not vetting leadership better? I think the question referring, why are we not vetting leadership better, in the direction of, here's this person with this history, this ongoing history, who's now preaching 6 months after being saved, but also in the direction of the uncle in leadership putting these boundaries and limitations on the parents.
Yeah, this isn't, he robbed a liquor store when he was 16. He's 35 now. Hasn't been to prison since and hasn't done it. You know what I'm saying? This is a different. First of all, drugs are illegal, by the way, and so's child porn, by the way. That's illegal. So, if any church is having this person preach, what the heck? What is going on?
There are some things that I think would almost always preclude someone from being in leadership.
I agree.
I think child pornography is one of them. For sure. I think everything is case by case, but I'm just saying there's a line there that I don't think you can, and it's not, maybe somebody's really repentant, etc., but there are consequences in life that sometimes that is what that looks like. All of that aside, why do we not vet leadership? I think this comes back, like everything I think comes back to, nobody knows what the Bible says. Nobody really knows what the Bible is saying about relationship with God, about the transformation that comes in a person's life from relationship with God. And in that, what he has said a shepherd will look like, we have distorted that and made it something else. It's either fantastical or it's charismatic or it's, a wow show or something. But there's no value put on the true intention of what elder requirements are. But more than that, at the base level, we do not have an overwhelming presence of educated believers in the church.
We have misplaced skepticism. And what I mean by that is that if somebody's had a checkered past and they're repentant and they do get saved and fruits are coming from them, people will sometimes almost be like skeptical of that person, but the person that repeatedly engage because within the believer, what's not being triggered is their forgiveness mechanism. See, you have somebody who claims they're saved. They're not. They go back to doing drugs, drinking, womanizing, or something like that. Then all of a sudden, it goes on to the onus goes on to the believer. Well, I haven't forgiven them. And my obligation is I have to forgive them. So the skepticism doesn't happen there where it should. So it's almost like the person engaging in the bad behavior or the manipulative behavior can take full advantage of just about any Christian community because we, like you were saying, we don't understand what the Bible says. We have the wrong onus put on the wrong thing almost 100% of the time. And so people are saying, well, it's my responsibility to be the one to forgive him, so I have to go out of my way to do that. No, you don't. They have to go out of their way to have the first fruits of Christ show up through them, through the Holy Spirit, through that indwelt mechanism that operates within, and to prove over a long period of time. Anybody can do just about anything for 2 weeks. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? It's a little bit of a different story. Do they stay away from Jack Daniels for 5 years? You know what I'm saying? They can not have a drink for 2 weeks. So I'm not saying they have to prove it. I'm not saying you have to be skeptical. I'm not saying all that kind of stuff. But come on, man. I mean, oh, well, he's a drug addict and he's doing this and he's doing that and he's been in prison and all this stuff. Let's just get him up and preach, though. He said he was sorry.
And I don't know if it's too simplistic to say, but like imagine that some of these types of people and ministers and leaders are like in the same time as Christ was in his ministry. What would his face look like looking at them? I know that sounds simplistic, but I just think, you got the guy coming up who's done this ridiculous pattern over and over and over, and then the drugs, the child pornography, and he's coming in and looking at Jesus like, yeah, I'm ready to do some good here. His face, because he had the wisdom of the Spirit and the discernment to understand that people are duplicitous, and there is a skepticism that needs to come when you're evaluating people for leadership. There's no way a man like that would have been considered by him ever.
Jesus didn't go and have strong words for convicted criminals. He had strong words for the religious leaders of the time. And the people doing this stuff, they took on the responsibility, but they weren't doing what they should have been doing. That's who Jesus had angry words for, 100% of the time. He wasn't like, Pontius Pilate, you super jerk. He wasn't going after him, He expected him to be, who he was. He called a bunch of guys a brood of vipers, That church, whatever had this guy doing that's a brood of viper church, man.
That's it.
Wow. That's a great
Is it always dark?
Brood of vipers. All right,
Brood
see you next week.
Which I will admit, that is my weakness because I do want to see the good in everybody, that I find myself justifying somebody's behavior and I have to catch myself and be like, nope.
That's what my role in the family and the friendship here is to remind you.
Kelly.
That person's never changing. Just kidding.
Well, and I think that's one of the good things about being like on the naughty side of things. It's like, oh, I recognize that in me. I had that. I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know what the mindset is of that. I know where you're at on something like that. So whatever that is,
That. On that note.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
Woo. All right, we will go ahead and say goodnight, Gracie. So if you have any questions, send us an email. You can DM us on the socials, as the kids would say. And, of course, if you enjoy the podcast, give us a like and a follow, and we'll talk to you next week.